Okay guys, so we're going to talk about statistics, the first PowerPoint that I handed to you. And statistics is pretty much like mean, median, and mode. You're going to talk about a sample, a data collection. I do believe you can probably fill these in just based on the answer key that I'm sending you. These are just terms that you need to memorize. There are different ways to collect data, and each one of those is described here, and you can also fill that in using the key. There are different ways of representing data, and you can look this over. The mean simply means average, and this is kind of a new symbol for you. It's called X bar. It just means average, so if you want to write that in there. Okay, and then I think you guys know how to find average. You just add them up and divide by how many there are. So down here, you can notice you just add them up and divide by how many there are, and that's how you get that number. And then there's the median. Median means middle. Okay, there you go. Median means middle. So just line them up in order. So if you have a whole bunch of numbers, you put them in order and you find your middle number. Notice there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers on the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers on the right, and then it's the middle number. Now, if there are two middle numbers, like for example, see how there's 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers on the left, 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers on the right, there's two middle numbers. You add them up, so you do 58 plus 59, and then you divide by 2. So that would be 117 divided by 2, and you would get 58.5 as the median. So if there are two middle numbers, add them up, divide by 2. Mode is the one that happens the most. And you can see sometimes you can have one mode, like this one is just 63, because 63 happens the most. Sometimes it can be bimodal, which means it has a couple of numbers that happen often, or it could be multimodal. Range is just the difference between the high and the low, so you subtract the high versus the low. So H minus L is what that is. So if you line them up in order, you just take your highest number, 63, minus your lowest number, 2, and you get your range of 61. And then this is kind of where we get a little more difficult. There's this thing called standard deviation. And then there's two types of standard deviation. This is where I need to slow down a little bit. Standard deviation describes how spread out your data is. And more specifically, it talks about how spread out your data is from the average. So it would be like saying if you have numbers that are very close together, like maybe they only venture from like 61 to 63, and there's like a whole bunch of numbers, that would be a very small standard deviation. Where if you have numbers ranging from like 2 to 63, you would have a much larger standard deviation. I'm going to work that out mathematically for you, although one of these calculators will solve for standard deviation for you, and I'll walk you through how to do that as well. So all the steps are written above. You're going to calculate the average, and I got it from my answer key. You are going to subtract the average. I don't know if you want to write, this just means the word average. You're going to subtract the average from each of the values, and then you're going to square what you get. You're going to add all those together. You're going to divide by the summation, and then calculate the square root. Say hi, Miss Bodner.
Hello, Miss Bodner.
Okay. So, let's take a look at this particular example. I don't really care what the example is about. You can make it up. Let's see. This is how many pencils Mrs. Langeli gave out during any day of the school year. There you go. So one day I gave out 2 pencils, one day I gave out 5 pencils, one day I gave out 48 pencils, one day I gave out 49 pencils, one day I gave out 55 pencils, so on and so forth. Okay? Ready for step 1. We're going to find the sample standard deviation. This is the most important one. There's also population. There's sample, and then there's population. Sample is the most important. So the first thing we need to do is we need to calculate the average. So step 1 is we have to find the average. So we find the X bar, and that just means average. So what that means is that we add them all up, and then we divide by how many they are. So we add them all up, and then we divide by how many. All right? So I'm going to grab a calculator, and we're going to add all of those numbers up. Okay, and I know 63 happens twice, so I had to put it in twice on my calculator. So when I add them all up, I get 524. Hopefully I did that right. Divide by how many they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We'll do 2 decimal spots when we divide. 524 divided by 11. 47 point, we'll do 64. So 4 significant digits is 47.64. So that's the average. Step 2 is the really, really, really long step. We have to take each of these individual numbers and subtract the rows. The video cut out, so I'm not quite sure where I left you, but what you have to do is you have to take all of these numbers and subtract this 47.64 from it. And then what we have to do is square all of that. So for example, we have to do 2 minus this number. I'm going to use parentheses, so we're going to do 2 minus 47.64. And then we're going to close our parentheses and we have to square our answer. Okay? And then we need to do 5 minus 47.64. Square our answer. And then we have to do 48 minus our 47.64 and square the answer. And then you have to do 49 minus 47.64, square the answer, and then 55 whoa. So 55 minus 47.64, square that answer. And keep going, okay? So 58 minus that number. And then 59 minus that number. Make sure you're squaring it. And then 60 minus that number. Seeing if I have room. Nope, no more room on the back page, so try to get it in there. I know that's a lot to do. Then 62. And then 63. And you have to do 63 twice. Okay, and then let's write what we have, and we'll do 4 significant digits the whole way down. So you just use your handy dandy and plug them all in. So we'll do 2 minus 47.64 squared. So that would be 2,083. And do it again. So that would be 1818. And this one's going to be 0.1296. And then 1.850 for significant digits. 5417. This is really fun. 107.3. Caleb, are you still awake? I can round. 129.0. I did that wrong on my paper. 152.8. Mm. 206.2. And last will be our 63. 235.9. and that happens twice. 235.9. All right. After you get all of that, that's all that step 2 from the box above. We're on step 3. You have to add all those together, okay? So you have to add all of these numbers up. So this is step 3. And we're going to use that fancy symbol so you get used to it. That fancy symbol is that. Yes, they can say. Okay, so step 3, we're going to use that summation formula. And we're going to write what it is. It's this weird, oh, I just realized that did not copy over right for you guys. That should be like, that should be one of these E's. I don't know what happened there. That should be one of those weird E's. Kind of like that one is up there, so I'm not quite sure what happened. So we do the summation, and what we're doing is we're doing x minus x bar squareds. But all you're really doing is adding up everything we just got. I really don't feel like doing that. I kind of trust what I got on my paper, but we'll add it up for good measure. Okay, that sounds like an exciting thing to do. 2083 plus 1818 plus 0.1296 plus 1.850 plus 54.17 plus 107.3 plus 129 plus 152.8 plus 206.2 plus 235.9 plus 235.9. Hopefully I get good. 5024. So I just added up everything from step 2 together, 5024. And then step 4, they tell us to divide that. They want us to take the 5024 and they want us to divide that by how many numbers there are minus 1. So if we count up, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 items. So I'm going to do 11 items. And we have to take away 1. So we divide by 10. And that's how I get this 10 right here. That's what it says for step 4. And step 5 is kind of with step 4. Step 5 tells us to take the square root of whatever we get. Okay? So let's take our calculator and do the square root of 5024 divided by 10. And we get 4 significant digits, 22.41. Now, what that means to you is that on average, all of these numbers are on average 22 units away from whatever the median would be. Okay? It's a very roundabout way of thinking about things. Statisticians use it a lot, and we use a lowercase s to represent that that's our sample standard deviation. A lot of work goes into that. There's population standard deviation, which is very, very, very close to what we did, but we are not going to do that. And you can read about it if you feel so inclined. I don't think they're going to test you on it because sample deviation is much better. The next thing we're going to talk about is how to graph a frequency distribution. This is not something that's going to throw you off that much. Let's say we have a coin and we toss the coin 3 times and assign the variable x to represent the frequency of how many times you get a head whenever you toss heads or tails. So I toss it 3 times, and let's say I get head, 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 so I get 3. The x value will be 3 because I got 3 of what I wanted. All right, next. Let's say I throw it and I get head, head, tails. Since I have 2 heads, I will get an x value of 2. The next one, head, tails, heads, I get a 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 0. And the x value column just represents how many times the head comes up. So x equals 1, it means that heads occurs 1 time. That's kind of what they're trying to say there. So these are the important numbers. Now, let's say we do that experiment, and then down here, we are going to calculate the likelihood that an outcome will occur within an experiment. So how many times did we get 0 up here? Well, let's take a look at how many times we did the entire thing. We did 1, 7, 8. There are 8, 4, 5, 6. All right, so we can notice there's 8 different ways that this happens. So down here, we ask ourselves, how many ways is there to not get any heads? So like in other words, if we just got tail, tail, tails, see that 0? So it's almost asking you, how many times does 0 happen? Well, on that list, only 1 time. So only 1 time out of 8 times will we get a 0 for x. In other words, only 1 time out of 8 times will we not flip a head. Now, how many times do we just get a single head? How many times is that possible? 1, 2, 3. So you see up there we have those 3 ones. So that's a 3 out of 8. How many times did we get 2? We got 2, 3 out of 8. 3 times we got 2. And how many times did we get 3? Only 1 time out of 8. And if you add all those up, you should notice that you get 8 out of 8 or 100%. Okay? And then all you have to do is plot it, and I hope that kind of makes sense. Like how many times did you get 0 once, how many times did you get 1, 3, how many times did you get 2, 3, and how many times did you get 3 once. All right? And that's just information about a histogram. A histogram is simply a bar chart that the bars are touching, and it measures how often something happens, and that's all you need to know about that. I hope you had as much fun as I did and that you enjoyed your keystones. Bye!